Hi, welcome to this preview video for a brand new game from Tabula Games, which is called Icaion. Icaion builds on the lore of their previous design, which is called Mystia, another fantastic design, another fantastic game. And actually here Mystia is the city at the center of the game board. Players are becoming seekers, adventurers, trying to exploit all the land, get as much coin, crystals and ancient artifacts out from the Forgotten Lands, take it back to the organization which is funding their expeditions. And you have to do this by being very careful about this gigantic, titanic, enormous miniature, which is a creature that lurks from each edge of the game board, moving in a circular pattern, spreading disease and parasites across its way. You will have to cross your paths with it, and you have to investigate and find out more about it and try to get as many victory points as possible by all the things you're going to discover. So let's go quickly through the setup and let's get into the game in more detail. So the first thing that you do is you have to put the game board at the center of the table and then put the event board at the side of the game board. You flip the event board to the corresponding side. One side is for 2 or 3 players and the other side is for 4 players. Then you have to create common pools for the coin crystals, the parasites and also the rest of the material that comes into the game. Keep in mind that this is a prototype, so all the crystals will still be crystals but much better quality, but also the miniatures will be replacing all the wooden components. The parasites, which now they're just wooden cubes, will be great, fantastic, very elegantly designed miniatures. The same goes for the heroes, the adventurers, but also for the buildings and the machinery of the game. Next, what you do is you place the Colossus on a random crater on the board. You can see that there are 5 different crates around the edges of the game board. Just quickly to zoom out and show you the way the map looks. You can see the 5 crates. Colossus is already occupying one of these 5 circles around the edges of the board. In the center we have another circle which stands for the city. This is Mystia. It has some adjacent inner circle regions. These are the 5 ones that they are directly in contact with the circle of the city. And then we have the outer rim, which is consisted of another 10 regions, which they are intercepting between the spots for the Colossus and the spots for the extra regions, meaning that between 2 spots for the Colossus from crate to crate you can find 2 additional regions. Therefore you have the inner rim of regions and the outer rim of regions, plus the crates where the Colossus moves. Next, what we do is we shuffle the Colossus primal shards in a way that we don't see their value. These look like that. You see they look like very nice 3D custom shards with a value on them. And then what we do is we put them randomly without seeing the values in the slots that they have at the base of the Colossus. Therefore, each slot we're going to get 1 shard like that. Next, we have to put some crystals. These are those crystals that you can see here. Essentially, these are the resources of the game coming out from the different terrain, the different type of terrain. Speaking about terrain, let's see the different types of terrain that we have. You can see that this is not your ordinary terrain that you would expect. The art is fantastic. It has very unique and very fantastic design and details. So what you see is, for example, these are forests. Therefore you have the respective green coin crystals that originate from these areas. Then you have the different blue coin crystals which come up from the river. So you have one river, region 2, 3. So in any case, one of the 5 inner circles contains one of the 5 different terrain, and you have +2 in the outer rim. So essentially you have 3 regions of each type. Let's recap. We have the riverland, the forest, the crystal field, the land of mist, the mountain. As you can see, each different terrain type produces different coin crystals in their matching color. So the game starts with a bit of setup. So we place some coin crystals around the game board before we start playing. So if we play with 2 or 3 players, we match the color of both the crystal and the region, and we place 1 coin of each of the 10 external regions and 2 coins on each of the 5 interior regions. But if we play with 4 players like we do now, we match the colors again of both crystals and regions, and we place 2 coins on each of the regions of the game board. So we have 2, whether it's outer rim or inner rim. In the inner rim we have only 1. Another thing that we do in the 4 players is we put 1 parasite on each of the inner circle regions. Then we take the 5 different region cards which play essential role in the core mechanism of the game. Again, we have the river card with the icon and the art, the mountain, the forest, the crystal field, and the land of mist. So we take all these, we shuffle them, and we place them on the corresponding space on the event board. Let me show you. This is the event board, and this is the space where the region cards are placed. Also, we take the 3 Colossus cards, these are those 3, we mix them randomly and we put 1 on each spot of the event board. This is for 1, 2 and 3. We have 3 major rounds in the game and we place 1 Colossus card on each of them randomly. The deck you can see at the top of the event board here is the Curio deck, but we're gonna come back with a bit more details later on. What we do is we take it, we shuffle it, and we give 3 cards to each player for the starting hand. And then we put the rest on the corresponding space on the event board. The city stands in the center of the game board, so we take the 5 different colored apparatuses. Each one has a Latin number starting from 1, 2 and 3 with different victory conditions. This goes for all the colors, so we put the number 3 at the bottom, followed by the number 2, and on top of it we have the number 1. So 5 different colors, 5 different type of apparatuses, with each having different ways to score victory points. Then each player chooses a color and takes the respective division board, reputation marker, color-based ring for their miniature. Here we don't have a miniature, we have just a meeple because it's a prototype, and the 12 machines, 3 harvester, 3 scavenger and 3 refiner. You can see them already placed on the division board. The harvesters are the ones that are on the first column. Here we have this one, but these are going to be obviously replaced with great miniatures. The second column has the scavengers, and the third column has the refiners. So to recap, harvesters, scavengers and refiners. Just a minor adjustment for the balancing for the setup for 2 or 3 players. So if we play with 2 players, each player takes turns placing 1 machine at a time of a third non-player color in any region of the board until all 3 machines of each type have been placed. And if we're playing with 3 players, then we take turns placing 1 machine at a time of a 4th non-player color in any region on the board until 2 machines of each type have been placed. Therefore, we add a bit of more neutral machines to occupy some of the region to give a start for the game. Keep in mind that there is a limit of 3 machines for each region, and all machines in the same region must be different both in color and in type. Game comes with 4 seeker cards and 4 specialized gear cards. So what you do is you take 1, you shuffle and you give randomly 1 seeker card to each player, and it goes in this slot, and then you give randomly 1 specialized gear for each player and they go to the bottom slot. So then you have a random setup. Keep in mind that already the stretch goals have unlocked a 5th player and additional seekers and additional material, so you're gonna have much more things to combine. Each card provides an ability here and here. We're gonna come back later with details on this, but what is important to note are the icons. Here we have 2 card icons plus 3 from the gear, a total of 5, and this stands for the maximum hand size. Then we have 1 plus 2, 3 icons with the arrow, and that stands for the maximum number of upgrade curio cards that you may have in play at the same time. And then you have some starting crystals that you take. Here you have 2 gray and 1 green, which means that you're gonna start the game with respectively 2 gray and 1 green, and you're gonna put them in one of your null cages here. Okay, so we have 4 emergency power supply tokens with for the corresponding number of players, starting from Latin number 1, 2, 3 and 4. We take as many as the players that they participate in the games, and now here we have a 4-player game, so we take all of them and then we shuffle them and we randomly deal 1 to each player. They have a 2-sided, they look like this. They're 2-sided, one side is the charge and the other side is the discharge, and what happens is you take it and you plug it in on the top of your division board so we can see the turn order as well, and if you have used your emergency power supply token, so it is from your available side or your discharged side. For the last step, in reverse order of play, from the last player to the first, we start by placing our seeker, our miniature of our adventure, on one of the available starting positions. These are the ones that they have the nodes. You can see, for example, this one, the one on the top where the yellow player stands, the one on the other top where the red stands, or the one on the right where the green starts. That means that this is not occupied from any other player, but obviously since we have the 5th player unlocked, here's the position where the 5th player will start. So starting from the last player in turn order, they pick where they want to start from. So in the game of Icaion, players will confront each other in the course of 3 years. Remember, we had 3 cards for the Colossus miniature. This play a role because each year we're going to add one to the mix. We're going to come back to this later on. So 3 years for the whole game, and each year has 3 phases. Phase 1 is the beginning of the year, Phase 2 is during the year, and Phase 3 is at the end of the year. Let's see how each phase for the years works like. So the first thing that we do is we add the Colossus card to the current year in the event deck, and we shuffle it and we place the deck back in its position. So remember, here we have 3 Colossus cards. We have placed randomly on each year one of the 3 cards. So we take the one for the corresponding year, which is this one. We take the event deck, which consists at the beginning all the region cards. We include the Colossus card, we shuffle it, and then we place it back at its place. Keep in mind that in the following 2nd and 3rd year, we're going to add the 2nd Colossus card and the 3rd Colossus card respectively, but we're not going to remove any Colossus cards from the deck. So essentially in the 3rd year, Colossus is going to be activated 3 times. Then randomly we draw and plug into the Colossus miniature base that many primal shards as the number of players. So for example, if we're playing 3-player game, we add 3 primal shards in the bases. If we play a 4-player game, we add 4, but if we play 2-player game, we always add at least 3. Therefore, we don't see the values of the primal shards, and we randomly plug them in on the base of the Colossus, which will hide their value while they are being inserted in the base. The last step that happens in phase 1 at the beginning of a year is the order of play. Remember that the player with the emergency power supply with number 1 goes first, and the other players follow in numeration. At the beginning of year 2 and 3, all emergency power supply tiles are recharged, so they're flipped to their available side, and what happens is then we check the reputation score track, the VP track. The last player gets the tile number 1, the second to last gets the tile number 2, and so on so forth. So let's see what happens at phase 2 during the year. During this phase, players take turns following the order of play, and a series of turns is called a round. Players continue to play until the next phase, the end of the year. Let's talk about the events now, what happens. At the start of their turn, the first player reveals a card from the event deck. The space that card is destined to go to contains some useful information instructions on how to proceed. The revealed card also has a role and has some information. So let's see what's going on. If a region card is revealed, we place as many coam crystals as indicated on the event board space of the region of that type. So for example, here we opened the card with the crystal fields and it covered the space showing the number of 2. You see, each card space has on the top left a number with the number of crystals, coam crystals, that are going to be placed on the respective terrain type when this occupies this slot. Here, for example, when we reveal this card from the deck, it covered this space. It shows this number 2. So we have to put 2 coam crystals on each space terrain of crystal fields. That means that we're going to populate the board with some specific crystals. Also, I'm sure you noticed that besides the number of crystals that we're going to put, there is the symbol for the parasite. That means that we're going to put one parasite. This is going to be a miniature, but for the purpose of this prototype, this is a wooden cube, on each of the spaces of the region type of the crystal field. So the 3 crystal field regions is going to get each of them 2 crystals of the corresponding color plus 1 parasite. So for our example, I remind you that we opened a terrain card showing the crystal field, and it was placed on a spot showing 2 crystals plus a parasite. That means that we're going to find each crystal field region like this one, and we're going to put 2 crystals of the respective color plus 2. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put 1 parasite, because the card covered a parasite, here and here, because the card covered the parasite icon by being placed on this slot. Keep in mind that there is a saturation limit for the number of coam crystals that can occupy a region, and that depends on the number of players. So for 2 players we can have up to 5 crystals, with 3 players we can have up to 6, and with 4 players, like we're playing here, we can have up to 7 coam crystals per region. One last modification for 2 or 3 player game is that when you have to place a parasite, because it was indicated by the slot where the card was placed, you do not place a parasite on the internal region of the 3, the one adjacent to the city. You place only 1 parasite on each external regions. So for example, here, if we're playing a 3 player game, we're not going to place a parasite here, but only on the external regions of the crystal field region type. If a Colossus card is revealed, for example, let's go through the cards, and here we placed, I'm just gonna move it a bit here for simplicity reasons for the camera. So if a Colossus card is placed by opening a new card, then they will resolve the effects listed on the card from left to right. So we take the Colossus card and we start resolving all the effects from left to right. All the cards are explained in the rulebook, and we're going to come back with some more details at the end of this video. So let's understand the icons on the Colossus card, which again they are resolved from left to right in this specific sequence. Let's see all the icons and understand what they do. The first one is the icon, the Colossus on the move. We look for this icon on the slot that we covered, we count the bold spaces that we have seen, and that means that the Colossus is going to move for this, he's going to jump 1, 2, 3 or 4 slots in a clockwise manner. The second icon means that we place 1 parasite on each region adjacent to the Colossus crater. And then the third icon means that the Colossus wounds all seekers, all heroes, on the nodes on the regions adjacent to the crate. And then the fourth symbol means that the Colossus wounds all seekers on the nodes of the regions adjacent to the crate it moves through, so not only where he lands. So for example, you can see that this card that we just opened has 2 of those icons. That means we have the 4th icon that he's going to move 1, 2, 3 or 4 depending on where the card is positioned, and he's going to wound all the seekers, the heroes, that they are sitting in nodes adjacent to the crates along the way, not where he ends up only. And then he's going to position parasites like you have seen here with this icon. the different Colossus cards have different icons. For example, let's see the second one, just to show you that we resolve first this one, first we move, then we place parasites, again we place parasites, and then the Colossus wounds the Seekers. In the first year we're going to see only one Colossus card. In the second year we're going to see 2 Colossus cards, and in the third year we're going to see 3 Colossus cards. So he's going to do more damage than before. If you were to place a 4th parasite in a region, like that, this is not placed. So instead what happens is you don't place a parasite, and instead all machines in the region are destroyed and put back into the game box. Also, you remove all parasites from the region and put them back into the common supply. If a Seeker is one of the region nodes, for example if he was sitting here, then what happens is the Seeker is wounded. So he's dropped sideways. Each year, at the beginning of the 5th round of play, all players' emergency power supplies are recharged, and this is what this icon stands for. So we have 4 slots on the top row, and then we move on the bottom row, which starts with the 5th slot for the 5th card, and then it's when the power emergency supply token is being recharged. Okay, so let's see how the player turn goes. On your turn, first you have to decide whether to move or set up camp, which means when you set up camp, you just stay put, you don't move. Then you have to perform one of the standard actions that they are various, and they span from extract, deploy a machine, eradicate parasites, investigate the Colossus, retrieve an apparatus, install an apparatus, and keep watch. Before or after performing the mandatory standard action, you may choose whether you like to perform a special action, or you can just don't do any special action. Then you can play a curio card, and then you can use also the emergency power supply. It is mandatory to do a standard action, but it's not mandatory to do a special action, so it's up to the player's strategy. Let's see how all of these work in practice. So first of all, as we said, we either decide to set up camp or to move. If you want not to move away from your node, you must spend a blue coin, as you can see on the bottom section here. You need to spend a blue coin crystal in order to set up camp and not to move. As a general rule, spent coin is always put back into the common supply. If you want to travel to another node, or you just have no blue coin to set up camp, you have to move by default, and then your Seeker, your hero, can always move a distance up to the 2 nodes for free. This is represented by the 2 movement icons visible on the top part of the division board of this spot. You see you have 2 arrows here, and that means you can always move 2 free spaces, 2 nodes, from one to the other. So for example, I can either spend a blue coin crystal, if I have it already in my null cage, to stay put and not to move. That means to set up camp, or if I don't have crystal or I don't want to, I can do at least 2 movements from one node, 1, 2 for example, and then I just do this for free. There are some simple movement rules that you would expect. Normally you cannot end your movement on the node where you started. If you want to move further away than 2 nodes, you have to spend blue coin. First though, you need to unlock the related ability by deploying second row's harvester. We're going to see how this is done. And each time you deploy a machine, then you unlock some abilities. Let's see again the division board of the player. So for example, if I have placed this machine on the game board, then I have unlocked this section. Following the row, I can do this or that, and then if all the row is unlocked, or even the 2 sections first, that means that I can do additional movement as described on the division board. So this means that for each blue coin I spend, I may move 1 additional node, and if I have also unlocked this one, that means that I can also move up to 2 additional nodes for each blue coin spent. Note that it's totally legal to end your movement on a node with an opponent miniature, so you can stay 2, 3 or even more Seekers on the same node. If your Seeker gets wounded, you must choose to either discard a curio card from your hand or lie down your Seeker's miniature on its side, showing that he is wounded. At the beginning of your next turn, if your Seeker is on the ground, you put the miniature back on its feet, and for this turn you may only perform a standard movement up to 2 nodes or set up camp. You cannot perform other kinds of movement, and you cannot perform a special action, obviously. Okay, so let's see the standard actions. After you have chosen either to move or set up camp, you have to perform a standard action. Let's see those in detail. First of all, we said that you can extract. What you do is you take one calm crystal from each region adjacent to your node that contains any. Whenever you collect any quantity of calms by any means, you must deposit it in one of your null cages, which are located at the bottom row of your division board. The calm you deposit replaces any crystal already stored in a null cage, and also when emptying a null cage, meaning you spend calm crystal, its content is discharged to the common supply. You may decide to discharge the freshly acquired calm instead of emptying a null cage. It's up to you. So here, for example, this seeker, this hero, if he chooses to perform the extract action, they may take one calm from each region adjacent to their node that they're sitting on. That means that they can take one blue, one pink, and one gray, and put them all in one of their null cages, if they have space to do so. Just to show in practice, I would put them here. Each time you need to spend calm crystals, you take the amount you need from among your null cages, and there are no restrictions to this. Whenever you perform an extract action, you may also activate all your machines deployed in the regions adjacent to your node, meaning you're here, you performed an extract action picking up crystals, and you can activate all the machines that you have in this region. So for example, for this reason, I'm just going to replace this guy with this one, and let's say this is the red player, so he picked up an extract action, and then he can activate all the machines that he has in the adjacent regions to the node he's sitting on. The order of activation is up to the player. So the three different types of machines, they do different things. First of all, they have the harvester. The harvester is the first column on your activation board, so for this prototype they look like these train miniatures here. You can take an additional calm from the region where the machine is deployed. So if I was picking by extract 1, because I have a harvester here, I'm going to pick up 2, plus 1, plus 1. Then you have the scavenger. The scavenger is the one that looks like a bridge shape for these prototype purposes. So that means that you can draw a curio card. You cannot draw a curio card if you have reached your hand limit. So having scavengers in a region where we do extract allow us to draw valuable additional curio cards, supposingly that we have hand limit to do so. And the last machine type that we have is the third column on our division board, and this is the refinery. This looks like this pyramid shape here for this purpose of this prototype. And if during the extract action you took a calm crystal from the region where this machine is deployed, you may activate the refinery and gain 2 reputation points. So you want to do extract action next to this type of refiners because they give you 2 additional victory points and you gather more victory points like that. And here is the catch. Remember the parasites? They look like simple innocent wooden cubes, but they're going to be really mean miniatures in the final production. So the important thing to note is that parasites hinder machinery. In a region where there are more parasites than machines, machines do not provide the bonuses, and then you only perform the extract action. So here I wouldn't be able to get 2 additional victory points, as I mentioned before, because I have more parasites than machinery. Next standard action is the deploy of a machine. To deploy a machine, you move it from your division board to a region on the game board. There are some simple rules you have to follow. You may only deploy the leftmost machine from each row on your division board, and at the start of the game you may only deploy a harvester, obviously. After you deployed your first harvester, you can either pick up the scavenger from the same row or again go for another harvester. And you may only deploy a machine to one of the regions adjacent to your seeker's node. You cannot deploy a machine to a crater or to the city. So for example here, if I was going to deploy a machine, I cannot deploy a machine here because I have to respect the rules. I can deploy it either here or here, because this is adjacent to my seeker's node, the space where he is located. The cost of deploying a machine to a region depends on the number of machines already spent in that region. If you're deploying the first machine in a region, it only costs you 1 quam of the same color as the region. So here I will need to spend 1 green quam to the supply in order to be able to position 1. Then, if you're placing additional machinery, then you have to pay more com. For example, deploying the second machinery costs you 2 com crystals, 2 green crystals in this example, and the third machinery costs 3 com crystals. Keep in mind that you can have only up to 3 machinery in each region, and they have to be of different color and different also type. That means that you cannot put a second yellow machinery here, even if it's a different one, a different type. So whenever you deploy a harvester or a scavenger from your division board, you unlock a bonus for the rest of the game. For the first row, you increase your eradication potential, your strength, meaning how many parasites you can kill. For the second row, you increase your total movement, so you are more efficient and you can travel further away on the Forgotten Lands. And for the third row, you gain additional cages to store additional com crystals. Deploying a refiner immediately provides a one-time bonus that you have in this row. For example, here you can again flip your emergency power token to its available site and gain 5 victory points. This is the first refiner. The second row refiner, you can choose com of any color, then take 2 crystals of that color from the common supply. And for the third refiner, you immediately draw up to 2 curio cards. These are permanent abilities, that the bonuses that they happen instantly when you unlock the specific refiner. Another standard action that you can do is you can eradicate parasites. You need to eliminate them for various reasons, because they hinder machinery, but also to gain victory points. So, as you can see on the first row, this is the row for the eradicate parasites standard action. So you may pay 1 grey com crystal to remove parasites from the regions adjacent to your seeker node, and for each grey com you spent, you can remove a number of parasites equal to the number of strength icons you unlocked on your division board, so you can eradicate more. You may spend any number of com crystals in each turn to perform eradicate action. Keep in mind that when you perform the eradicate action, you keep the removed parasites in front of your division board, and there is no limit on the amount of parasites killed that you can have in front of you. At the end of the year phase, players will receive reputation points depending on the number of parasites they have collected during the year. Another standard action that you can do is you can investigate the Colossus. Before explaining this, I'd like to take the Colossus in my hand and show you. This is a prototype racing miniature, but look at how great this looks like. This is a huge mini, very nice detail. This is a fantastic miniature. Seems like nothing that I have in my collection. So the standard action that we discussed is to investigate the Colossus. If your seeker is located on the edge of the crater where the Colossus is currently sitting, for example, we have our seeker next to one of the nodes of the crater where the Colossus is, then you can perform this Colossus investigation action. Each crater has 3 nodes on each edge. You take a primal shard from the miniature and reveal its value, which ranges from 1 to 3. So for example, I pick up this one, and I was a bit of unlucky because this is 1. But in any case, I received 1 crystal shard. This one, for example, shows 2, etc. So, you take the primal shard from the mini and you reveal the value. You may spend any amount of pink com up to the primal shard value, and you immediately score 1 reputation point for each pink com spent this way. So for example, if I picked up the one with the number value 2, I would be able to spend up to 2 pink com crystals to gain 2 victory points. If you spend an amount of pink com equal to the primal shard value, you also claim the primal shard for yourself and you place it on your division board. So you don't keep this unless you pay all the value up to the maximum number of which is engraved on the crystal shard. So here is 1, but it could be 2 or 3 as we have seen before. So if I spend at least 2, not at least, here I can spend up to 2. If I spend 2 pink com crystals, then I take 2 victory points and I take this for myself and put it on my division board in the section where we store primal shards specifically. So if you spend less pink com than the primal shard value, or if you already possess 5 primal shards, you still get the reputation points, but you also have to discard the primal shard and you remove it from the game. Another possible action you can do, another standard action, is to retrieve an apparatus. If your seeker is located in one of the city nodes, we have 5 city nodes around the city, where you can have your seeker. Let's put him here so you can see it better. So if you are located next to the city, what you can do is you can choose an apparatus style between those available for the current year. So for the first year we can only get level 1 apparatuses, whichever we want. For the second year, I'm going to show later on the upkeep phase that we remove what's not up to date, so we can take the second year or the third year respectively. So we take the apparatus and we retrieve it and we place it in our division board. There is a slot on the right of our division board, temporary slot for apparatuses. We have only one slot, temporary slot for apparatuses. That means that we cannot take two if we have not installed them before. Let me show you what I mean. So when I retrieve an apparatus, I take the apparatus from the city and I place it temporarily on the right side of my board, of my division board. That means that I have retrieved an apparatus. You may only retrieve an apparatus per year and only if it corresponds to the current year. You may only retrieve an apparatus if the retrieval space on your board is empty, so if it's already occupied you cannot take a second one, like we explained before, and you may only retrieve an apparatus of a different kind of those you already installed. Whenever you retrieve an apparatus, you immediately score the reputation points of its multiplier. We're going to discuss this later, but all of these apparatuses are huge ways of gaining victory points in different ways, and it's up to the player to match the timing when it's best for them to score them. So this brings me to the next available standard action, which is to install an apparatus. If your seeker is located on the edge of the crater where the Colossus currently is, you may perform an install apparatus action. Each apparatus can be installed only in a specific crater that matches its color. That means, going back to the craters, you can notice now that they have different colors. That means if I want to install a green apparatus, I need to be next, the Colossus needs to be located on the green crater, and then I'm able to install a previously retrieved green apparatus from my division board. On your division board, you move the apparatus tile from the retrieval space to the space on the right associated with the same year. That means that this is year 1, because it has a Latin number 1, so I'm going to place it on the space with number 1. If this apparatus was of another year, coming from year 2 or year 3, it would be placed on year 2 or year 3 space. So I install it by placing it here at the bottom of my division board. An install apparatus will again provide the reputation points, the multiplier points, at the end of the game. Otherwise, you're not going to get them again at the end of the game. The last possibility you have is you can keep watch, meaning that you choose not to perform a standard action, but you may still perform a special action. Let's discuss about the special actions. You have two types of special actions. First of all, you can use the emergency power supply that we have on top of our division board. Remember, it has two phases, which is a charged and discharged phase. The only requirement to use the emergency power supply is that it must be charged before using it. To use it, you flip it to the exhausted side and you discharge it this way, and then you choose one of the three options you have. You can overcharge machinery, meaning you take one COM of any color from the supply, and then each region where you have a machine currently deployed provides one COM of the same color as the region itself, again taken from the supply. You can draw up to two, either that, or you can draw up to 2 curio cards. You never can exceed your hand limit. And the last thing you can do, if you wish to, meaning one of the three again, you can double shift. That means that after you have performed a standard action, you choose one once again to move or set a camp and then perform a standard action. You cannot perform another special action, you can only perform a second standard action. So this is the case where you use your power supply token and then you have one of the subsequent three options to choose what to do with it. The other thing you can do is you can play a curio card. Remember, we start the game with 3 curio cards and have various abilities, and you play a curio card from your hand by playing it on the green, by paying the green COM cost, which is indicated on the top of the card. So all the curio cards have a cost in green COM crystals, and we need to acquire them for this reason, because it will allow us to play curio cards and gain the benefits. At the end of the rulebook, you can have various explanations of both all of the curio cards as well as all the different details that we have discussed so far. Curio cards usually are discarded after resolve, and there are exceptions, some of them which have a special icon that means that they stay next to your division board and they are a special ability that you have for the rest of the game, and usually all of them that provide bonuses that if you time them correctly to the specific time of your gameplay, then you can gain quite a lot of advantage. Just quickly to show some of the cards, all of them have just an icon, there is no text, they're very well explained in the rulebook. At the bottom, for example, this is the one that stays next to your division board, and you have this always, same like this one, but this one, yeah, all of them. I was very lucky to pick all of those that stay next to your board. But if you don't have this icon, then you just do the bonus and then you discard it. So when the 5th region card is placed on the event path, on the event board, the last round of the current year begins. All players take one last turn and then the year ends. Each player counts how many parasites they eradicated during the year, and in 2 or 3 players, the player who collected the most parasites immediately scores 9 victory points, the second player scores 4, and the third only scores 1. If we're playing a 4-player game, the player who controls the most parasites immediately scores 10 victory points, the second 6, the third 2, and the fourth 1. To score victory points, obviously, you need to have collected at least 1 parasite. After scoring, each player discards all collected parasites to the common supply. They discard the tiles on top of the apparatus piles. That means that we have to move to the next year apparatuses, so they are available. And for example, at the end of year 1 and 2, the next year begins, so we go back to phase 1. At the end of the year 3, the game ends, and then we have to do some additional checking of victory points to see who wins. So let's see how the game ends. At the end of year 3, you score additional reputation points, which is 1 reputation point for each leftover Quam crystal you have in your null cage. Additional reputation points based on the number of primal shards collected so far. There is a minus 17 penalty in victory points if a player hasn't collected any primal shards at all. And then you can gain quite a lot of victory points, as you can see. With 2, 3, 4 or 5 you can go up to 5, 10, 20 and 30 victory points, which is quite a lot. So actually going after primal shards is a good strategy to gain additional victory points, but keep in mind the same will do the rest of the players. You may decide to double the scoring provided by an apparatus by linking a primal shard to it. Each primal shard can only be linked to a single apparatus, and each apparatus can only double its score. Speaking of apparatuses, let's recap and see what you score at the end of the game for apparatuses. So the apparatuses that were previously installed at the bottom of your division board now provide once again all the reputation points. There are multipliers, I'm going to see them at the end of the video, but this one is going to score again and this one is going to score again. Now if you have collected any primal shards, hopefully you have quite a few, then you can link up to 1 primal shard for each installed apparatus, and then you can again double the scoring, the victory points that it's going to provide. But if you don't have enough primal shards, you cannot obviously double the victory points that they give. You sum up all the victory points that you have collected plus the ones that you received at the end of the year number 3, and then the player with the most reputation points, the most victory points, wins the game. If there is a tie, the player who was last in order wins and breaks the tie. Okay, let's quickly see the Seeker cards, the 4 ones that are actually in this prototype, but keep in mind that there is a 5th one because we have 5 players unlocked, plus there are additional ones from the stretch goals, from the campaign. So, the top left here is the Lone Ranger. On your turn, on your last turn, during each end of the year phase, you may move your Seeker on any node on the game board instead of performing a standard move action. This is the machine on the bottom. When you investigate the Colossus, you score 3 times the amount of reputation points you would normally do. Wow! Then you have the Hare here. Each time you play a Curio card, you immediately score 1 victory point. That's great strategy. Also here we have the creature. You may perform investigate the Colossus action, retrieve an apparatus and install an apparatus has special actions. This means that you can investigate the Colossus up to twice the same turn, once as a standard action and once as a special action. These abilities seem to look quite strong, but all of them are different and they push you to follow a different strategy. This is quite nice because it gives you quite a lot of asymmetry in what each seeker does. Let's see some of the specialized gear cards. For example, the top left one shows the specialized gear 1, which is your basic movement distance is improved by 1 node. You see you have one more movement icon. Then you have this one here, which shows that each year at the beginning of your very first round you may draw up to 2 curio cards, and you can see round year 1, 2 and 3 you can draw up to 2 more cards. Then we have this ability here, the specialized gear 2, which at the end of the game you score 3 reputation points for each primal shard you own, more victory points for primal shards. And then you have the last one, which is the blue one here. Each year at the beginning of your very first round you may choose comb of any color, then take 3 crystals of that color from the common supply. Keep in mind that you match a seeker card with a specialized gear card, and then you have the combination of starting resources plus abilities and icons. So it's quite a lot to give you different variability and different feeling, also different things to go after in each game. I'm going to show you now what the apparatuses do. I'm going to start from the blue on the top and then move clockwise. You have the blue one, which gives you 4 reputation points for each scavenger you have currently in play. This is paired with having quite a lot of scavengers in play. Then the next one following the blue clockwise is the gray, and says that you get 4 reputation points for each upgrade curio card you have currently in play. Then you have the one at the bottom, which is the pink, and it gives you 5 reputation points for each Colossus primal shard collected on your division board. Next is the green, which gives you 3 reputation points for each bonus unlocked on the Eradicate Parasites row of the division board, so it pushes you to go for the unlocking the eradication row quite fast. And then the last one is the orange, which gives 3 reputation points for each harvester you have currently in play. A quick snapshot of the Colossus cards, again going from left to right. First we have the one on the left. What you do, I'm explaining the icons at the bottom of the Colossus cards. For the left card, first you move the Colossus, then you place 2 parasites on each region adjacent to the Colossus crater, and then the Colossus wounds all seekers on the nodes of the regions adjacent to the crater. The middle card has the following sequence. First you move the Colossus. While it moves, it also wounds all seekers on the nodes of the regions adjacent to the craters it moves through. The crater where it ends its movement also counts, and then you place 1 parasite on each region adjacent to the Colossus crater. The third card has the following sequence, 4 icons. First of all, you place 1 parasite on each of the region adjacent to the Colossus crater, then you move the Colossus, then you place 1 parasite on each region adjacent to the Colossus crater again, and the fourth icon, the Colossus wounds all seekers on the nodes of the regions adjacent to the crater. You can see some examples of curio cards. For example, the first one on the left shows that you take from the supply as much comb crystals as depicted on the card. The second one, for example, can tell you that you immediately score as many reputation points as depicted. Here we have 5. The third one says that you immediately perform the action shown on the card. If 2 actions are listed, you choose only one to perform. You recharge the artifact, etc, etc. So you have quite a lot of options. These are instant bonuses. Keep in mind, some curio cards are upgrade cards. So for example, these show you that the ones on the left, these cards add extra null cage, strength and movement icons to your division board, so you can move even more, eradicate parasites even more, or store even more crystals. And the second one tells you that, for example, whenever you spend comb, you may first transform 2 of your comb crystals of the same color into 1 of any color you choose. And you can see that these are abilities that can really help you quite a lot along the way. One last thing I want to mention is to recap how comb crystals may be spent too. For example, you can spend blue comb to set up camp or move additional nodes. You can spend brown comb to deploy a machine or use it as a wild resource. You can spend green comb to play a curio card, you spend grey comb to eradicate parasites, and last but not least, you spend pink comb to investigate the Colossus. All of the crystals have their value, and picking what to use when makes a lot of difference. Okay, so what I think about the game. Icaion is an engine territory building, resource management Eurogame for 2 to 4 players. Tabula Games knows how to be bold, and they know how to do innovative things with their designs. And this is no exception. If you played Mystia, I'm sure you're going to, and liked it, I'm sure you're going to enjoy even more Icaion. If you haven't played Mystia and you want to try Icaion, you can jump right ahead and try Icaion, because it's a standalone game which has nothing to do with Mystia. Even though the catch and the clever thing that they did is you can combine elements from both games and have another game, Mystia the Fall, which plays completely different. It's a co-op game. It's quite a unique thing to do with the design. Usually people would use, and publishers would use this as an expansion to do it as another print, but here they're offering it in the same campaign, and it's quite good, something to get maximized, to get 3 games out of 2 boxes. It's a great idea. So besides all this functionality and all these different games modes to play the game, let's talk about Icaion specifically. I really like the way Colossus moves around and eradicates and spreads parasites along the territory. You don't want to have parasites on the board because they hinder the use of machinery, so you cannot use your machines, and you need to use those machines because they give you those precious crystals, victory points, etc., etc. The different use of the different crystals for different things is quite great. The clever way to anticipate what is going to happen, because you can see that there are 5 regions in the deck and they're going to have all of them come into a sequence. So if you know what is still hasn't come in the deck for the region cards, you know what to expect and where to try to be close to get more combs or crystals of that color, because you want them for your strategy. So all of these elements really add a lot of things to consider. This is a game with simple rules, but has quite a lot of depth. And like Mystia, it's not from the rules difficulty that you get so much meat around the bone. It's from the way all of them interlock together and give this experience. Having a huge collection of close to 2,000 games, I really like when publishers do the extra mile and they try to bring something new and fresh on the table. This is a great example of this approach. I really like what they're doing with the previous games, and I really like what they have done here with Icaion. It's a great design, brings a lot of different approaches and ideas on the table. If you like Euro games, this is something definitely to consider, but also if you like great minis and great 3D presentation of your table, Tabula Games knows how to combine both the aesthetics, the 3D presence, the wow factor, and the great heavy mechanisms that really give a great Euro game to enjoy. I really like Icaion. I cannot recommend it high enough. I suggest that you go and check the campaign. Already it's doing great. Hopefully they're going to smash through all of their stretch goals and unlock many things. This is Icaion. Hope you enjoyed this video. Till next time.